The call came at 3:17 in the morning. Detective Sarah Brennan's phone vibrated against the nightstand, pulling her from a restless sleep. The voice on the other end belonged to Officer Marcus Webb, and the tremor in his tone made her sit up immediately. "We've got a situation, Detective. Young woman, 23 years old, hasn't been seen since yesterday afternoon. Her car was found abandoned at the Riverside Shopping Center with the driver's door wide open, keys still in the ignition, and her phone on the passenger seat. Blood on the steering wheel." Sarah was already reaching for her clothes. "I'm on my way." This was how it began. This was the moment that would unravel into one of the most heart-wrenching cases the small town of Millbrook Falls would ever witness. The disappearance of Ashley Elkins would expose dark secrets, test the bonds of family, and ultimately prove that sometimes the monsters we fear aren't strangers lurking in shadows, but people hiding in plain sight. Ashley Marie Elkins was everything a mother could hope for. At 23, she worked as a dental assistant at Riverside Family Dentistry, saving money for nursing school. Her apartment was modest but spotless, filled with houseplants she'd named and tended like children. She volunteered at the local animal shelter every Saturday morning, had a tight-knit group of friends, and called her mother, Jennifer Elkins, every single day without fail. Which was why Jennifer knew something was catastrophically wrong when Ashley didn't answer her phone on that Tuesday afternoon. "Ashley always answers," Jennifer would later tell Detective Brennan, her hands shaking as she gripped a coffee cup in the police station's interview room. "Always. Even if she's with a patient, she texts me right back. When I called and it went straight to voicemail, I knew. A mother knows." Jennifer had called Ashley's workplace first. The receptionist, a woman named Marcia, confirmed that Ashley had left work at her usual time, 4:30, saying she was going to run a quick errand at the shopping center before heading home. That was at 4:45. By 5:30, when Jennifer tried calling and got no answer, panic began its cold crawl up her spine. By 7 o'clock, Jennifer was in her car, driving to Ashley's apartment. The lights were off. Ashley's car wasn't in its designated parking spot. Jennifer used her spare key to enter the apartment, calling out her daughter's name into the darkness, knowing already that no one would answer. The apartment was exactly as Ashley had left it that morning. Bed made with military precision, dishes washed and drying in the rack. The cat, a gray tabby named Pepper, meowing desperately for dinner. That was when Jennifer called the police. Officer Webb had been the first to respond to Jennifer's frantic call. Initially, he'd tried to reassure her with statistics about missing persons, how most young adults turn up within 24 hours, how there were a dozen innocent explanations for a missed phone call. But Jennifer wasn't having it. "You don't understand," she'd said, her voice rising with each word. "Ashley wouldn't do this. She wouldn't leave Pepper alone without food. She wouldn't miss our call. Something happened to my daughter, and you need to find her right now." The urgency in Jennifer's voice must have struck something in Officer Webb, because he radioed for additional units and began checking local hospitals and gathering information. It was another officer, responding to Jennifer's description of Ashley's vehicle, who spotted the blue Honda Civic in the shopping center parking lot just before 9 o'clock. The scene was disturbing from the start. Ashley's car sat under a flickering parking lot light, isolated at the far edge of the lot, away from the main stores. The driver's side door hung open at an awkward angle, as if someone had exited in a hurry or been pulled from the vehicle. The keys dangled from the ignition, the car still in park. Ashley's phone rested face up on the passenger seat, its screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. Her purse sat in the footwell, wallet still inside containing her credit cards and $43 in cash. Most chilling was the blood. A smear of it streaked across the steering wheel, still tacky to the touch. More drops had spattered onto the driver's seat and formed a small pool on the asphalt beside the open door. This was no longer a missing person case. This was something far worse. Detective Sarah Brennan arrived at the scene 40 minutes after Officer Webb's call, her mind already racing through possibilities. She'd been with the Millbrook Falls Police Department for 11 years, the last 4 as a detective. She'd worked robberies, assaults, one murder that turned out to be self-defense. but she'd never worked a case quite like this. The parking lot had been secured with yellow tape, and the forensics team was already documenting the scene when Sarah ducked under the barrier. Crime scene photographer Tommy Lynn was circling the vehicle, his camera flash creating strobe light effects in the darkness. "What do we have?" Sarah asked Webb, who looked relieved to hand the situation over to someone else. "Blood appears to be fresh, no more than a few hours old," Webb said, consulting his notes. "No witnesses so far, though we're canvassing the area. Security cameras cover most of the lot, but this particular spot is in a blind zone. Store closes at 9. Most employees had already left by the time the vehicle was discovered." Sarah peered into the car without touching anything, her trained eyes cataloging every detail. The phone's cracked screen suggested a struggle or that it had been thrown. The positioned purse and wallet indicated robbery wasn't the motive. The blood pattern suggested someone had been injured in the vehicle, then either exited or was removed while bleeding. "We need to find out what errand she was running," Sarah said. "Which store, what she was buying, who might have seen her. And I want to talk to the mother." Jennifer Elkins sat in interview room 2, her face pale and drawn, dark circles already forming under her eyes. She'd aged a decade in the 6 hours since she'd first called the police. Sarah entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, though she suspected neither of them would drink much. "Mrs. Elkins, I'm Detective Sarah Brennan. I want you to know we're doing everything we can to find Ashley." Jennifer's eyes met Sarah's, and the detective saw a depth of fear that made her chest tighten. This was every parent's nightmare given form, sitting across from her in a worn cardigan and hastily tied sneakers. "Tell me about Ashley," Sarah said gently. "What was she like? Who were her friends? Was anyone bothering her lately?" The words came tumbling out. Jennifer described Ashley's routine, her habits, her relationships. Ashley had a boyfriend, Marcus Chen, whom she'd been dating for 8 months. He was a software developer, quiet and thoughtful, and Jennifer approved of him completely. Ashley's best friend was Kayla Morrison, who'd been her roommate in college. Her co-workers loved her. She didn't do drugs, rarely drank, had no enemies that Jennifer could think of. "What about her father?" Sarah asked, noting the absence of any mention of him. Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. "Richard left when Ashley was 7. He lives in California now, remarried with stepkids. He sends a birthday card every year, that's about it. They're not close." Sarah made notes, already forming a mental list of people to interview. Did Ashley mention anything unusual lately? Anyone following her? Any strange phone calls or messages? Jennifer started to shake her head, then stopped. Her face went pale and her hand flew to her mouth. "Wait. Oh God, wait. About 2 weeks ago, she mentioned something. She said a man had tried to talk to her at the grocery store. She said he made her uncomfortable, that he asked too many personal questions. What store did she work at? Did she live alone? That kind of thing. She left the store and he didn't follow, so she didn't think much of it. Why didn't I take it more seriously? Why didn't I tell her to report it? Did she describe him? Only that he was older, maybe 40s, with dark hair, wearing a baseball cap. Jennifer's voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. I told her to be careful. I told her to always be aware of her surroundings. But I never imagined something like this could actually happen. This is my fault. I should have done more. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Jennifer's hand. This is not your fault, Mrs. Elkins. The only person at fault here is whoever took Ashley. You're doing everything right. The details you're giving me are helpful. I promise you, we're going to find out what happened to your daughter. But even as she said the words, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. The first 48 hours were critical in any missing person case. Every minute that ticked by reduced the chances of finding Ashley alive. The investigation kicked into high gear as dawn broke over Millbrook Falls. Sarah assembled her team in the conference room, the whiteboard already filling with information. Photos of Ashley smiled down at them, a young woman with long brown hair, bright green eyes, and a warm smile that seemed to light up every picture. Our victim is Ashley Marie Elkins, 23 years old, Sarah began, addressing the room of officers and detectives. Last seen leaving work yesterday at 4:30. Vehicle discovered abandoned at Riverside Shopping Center approximately 4.5 hours later, with signs of a struggle and blood evidence. Forensics is processing the vehicle now, but we're treating this as an abduction. Detective James Murphy, Sarah's partner, leaned forward. Boyfriend alibi? We're bringing him in this morning, also interviewing the best friend, co-workers, anyone who might have information. Sarah pointed to a map of the shopping center. I want officers canvassing every store, showing Ashley's picture, asking if anyone saw her yesterday evening. Check surrounding businesses for security footage. Somebody must have seen something. The team dispersed with their assignments, and Sarah allowed herself a moment to study Ashley's photos. There was something haunting about seeing images of someone full of life, knowing they might already be beyond help. She shook off the dark thought. She couldn't afford pessimism, not yet. Marcus Chen arrived at the station at 8 in the morning, brought in by officers Webb and Patterson. He looked like he hadn't slept, his eyes red-rimmed, his hands shaking as he accepted a cup of water in the interview room. Sarah had seen enough guilty people to recognize innocence when she saw it, and Marcus radiated genuine terror. "When was the last time you spoke to Ashley?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice neutral despite her instincts. "Yesterday morning," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "We had coffee before she went to work. We talked about our weekend plans. She wanted to go hiking, said the weather was supposed to be perfect. We were supposed to have dinner last night at my place at 7. I made reservations at her favorite Italian restaurant for Friday. I was going to—" His voice broke completely, and he buried his face in his hands. "I was going to propose. I had the ring and everything. It's still in my apartment waiting for a moment that might never come." Sarah felt her throat tighten but maintained her professional composure. "When she didn't show up for dinner, what did you do?" "I called her like 20 times. I texted. I drove to her apartment, but her car wasn't there. I thought maybe she was upset with me about something, that I'd done something wrong without realizing it. Then Jennifer called me at 10:30, sobbing, telling me Ashley was missing and the police had found her car with blood in it." Marcus looked up at Sarah, his face streaked with tears. "Is she dead? Please just tell me if she's dead." "We don't know that," Sarah said firmly. "We're operating under the assumption that Ashley is alive and needs our help. But I need you to help me by answering some questions. Had you noticed anything unusual about Ashley lately? Anyone bothering her, anything making her nervous?" Marcus nodded eagerly, sitting up straighter as if desperate to be useful. "Yeah, actually, she mentioned a guy at the grocery store a couple weeks back, said he creeped her out, asked her all these personal questions, and last week she thought someone had been in her apartment while she was at work." Sarah sat up straighter. "What do you mean, in her apartment?" "She said little things were moved, not stolen, just moved, like someone had been going through her stuff. Her bathroom cabinet was open when she always closed it. Her dresser drawers weren't quite shut all the way. A pair of her underwear was missing. I told her maybe she was just forgetting where she put things, but she was convinced. She's not the type to be paranoid. Detective, if Ashley said someone had been in her apartment, someone had been in her apartment. She even asked her landlord about it, but he said only she and her mom had keys. This was new information Jennifer hadn't mentioned, probably because Ashley hadn't wanted to worry her. Sarah made a note to follow up on the landlord and whether anyone else might have access to Ashley's apartment. "Marcus, where were you yesterday between 4 and 9 p.m.? "At work until 6:30, then I went home and ordered takeout from Chen's Garden. I have the receipt, and my neighbor Mrs. Patterson saw me come in around 7. She always sits by her window. I can give you her contact information. I stayed home all night waiting for Ashley, calling her phone over and over, even though it went straight to voicemail." Marcus looked directly at Sarah, his eyes pleading. "I love Ashley more than anything in this world. I'd never hurt her. Please, you have to find her. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, please bring her home." The interview confirmed Sarah's initial instinct. Marcus wasn't their suspect. But someone had taken Ashley, and that someone had been either watching her or incredibly opportunistic. The detail about items being moved in her apartment suggested the former, and that made Sarah's blood run cold. Stalking cases were unpredictable, and stalkers who escalated to abduction rarely had happy endings. Kayla Morrison came in next, Ashley's best friend, a petite woman with pixie-cut hair and mascara-stained cheeks. She'd been crying since she heard the news, and her grief seemed to fill the small interview room like a physical presence. "Ashley was the most careful person I know," Kayla insisted, twisting a tissue between her fingers until it shredded. She had pepper spray on her keychain. She parked under lights. She never walked alone at night. She took a self-defense class last year. How could this happen? How could someone just take her? "Did she mention anything unusual to you recently?" Sarah asked, now looking for patterns in Ashley's final weeks. Kayla nodded slowly, her eyes distant as she searched her memory. She said she felt like someone was watching her. Not just once, but several times over the past month. She'd be at the coffee shop doing work on her laptop, and she'd get this feeling, like eyes on her, or at the gym on the treadmill, or walking to her car after her shift. But whenever she looked around, she couldn't spot anyone obvious. I told her it was probably nothing, just that feeling everyone gets sometimes. Fresh tears spilled down Kayla's cheeks. What if I was wrong? What if someone really was watching her and I dismissed it? What if I could have prevented this? "This is not your fault," Sarah said firmly, the same words she'd told Jennifer. "The only person responsible for Ashley's disappearance is the person who took her. But I need you to think carefully. Did Ashley mention any other incidents? Any encounters with strangers? Any gifts or notes she received? Anything at all out of the ordinary?" Kayla was quiet for a long moment, then her eyes widened. "The flowers. About a month ago, someone left flowers on her car windshield. She thought they were pretty at first, said maybe Marcus had surprised her, but when she asked him, he said he didn't know anything about them. There was no card, no note. She thought maybe it was a mistake that someone had put them on the wrong car. But what kind of flowers? Roses, red roses, a whole dozen of them tied with a white ribbon." Sarah made a note. Anonymous gifts were a classic stalker behavior. "Anything else?" "She got some weird calls about 3 weeks ago. Her phone would ring late at night, like midnight or 1 in the morning. But when she answered, no one would say anything. She could hear someone breathing on the other end, but they wouldn't talk. After the 3rd time, she blocked the number. She reported it to her phone company, but they said there wasn't much they could do unless it became threatening. This was escalating beyond a random abduction. If Ashley had been stalked, that changed everything. It meant someone had been planning this, waiting for the right moment, building up to this violation. Sarah felt anger burning in her chest, but she channeled it into determination. By afternoon, the forensics report came back. The blood in Ashley's car was confirmed as hers, type A positive. The amount suggested a significant injury, but not immediately life-threatening blood loss, maybe equivalent to a deep cut or moderate head wound. No usable fingerprints had been found aside from Ashley's own, suggesting the perpetrator had worn gloves or been careful not to leave evidence. But they had found something else. Fibers, the forensic technician, a woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, told Sarah. Dark blue synthetic fibers, consistent with industrial carpet, or possibly a van interior. Not from Ashley's car or clothing, they were found on the driver's seat and stuck to the blood on the steering wheel. And there's something else, something that concerns me. Dr. Vasquez pulled up an image on her computer. We found trace amounts of chloroform residue on the steering wheel and driver's seat headrest. Very small amounts, but definitely present. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Chloroform meant premeditation. Someone had come prepared to incapacitate Ashley, which meant this wasn't a crime of opportunity or a spontaneous act. This was planned, calculated, deliberate. "How long does chloroform keep someone unconscious?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer from her training. "Depends on the amount and method of administration, but generally not more than 15 to 20 minutes. Whoever did this would have needed to work quickly to get her out of a public parking lot and into another vehicle. The injury that caused the bleeding probably happened during the initial struggle before the chloroform took effect. The shopping center security footage, while not covering Ashley's parking spot directly, did provide some useful information. Cameras at the main entrance showed Ashley's Honda entering the lot at 4:52 p.m. She'd been alone in the vehicle, looking normal, not distressed. The same cameras showed a white cargo van entering the lot 2 minutes after Ashley at 4:54. The timing was too close to be coincidental. "Can we enhance the plate?" Sarah asked the tech reviewing the footage. "Working on it, but it's partial at best. Looks like it might have been deliberately obscured with mud or dirt. I can see what might be the first letter, possibly a W, but the rest is unreadable." Sarah watched the grainy footage again and again, studying every frame. The van was older, possibly a Ford or Chevrolet from the late 2000s based on the body style. No visible markings or company logos. The driver was careful to keep their face turned away from cameras, almost as if they knew exactly where the cameras were positioned. The van remained in the lot for approximately 37 minutes before exiting at 5:31, which aligned perfectly with the timeline of Ashley's disappearance. This person knew what they were doing. They'd planned this carefully, studied the location, prepared their tools, and executed the abduction with disturbing precision. Jennifer Elkins called Sarah's cell phone every 2 hours despite Sarah's regular updates. The detective understood completely. If it were her daughter, she'd be calling every 2 minutes. On the evening of the second day, 48 hours into Ashley's disappearance, Sarah drove to Jennifer's house personally to deliver an update, knowing the woman deserved to hear the latest developments face-to-face rather than over a phone call. Jennifer's house was a modest ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people waved to neighbors and kids rode bikes in the street on summer evenings. Jennifer answered the door looking even worse than she had the night before, if that was possible. She'd stopped trying to maintain appearances, her hair unwashed and tangled, wearing the same clothes Sarah had seen her in that morning. "Please tell me you found her," Jennifer whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please tell me my baby is coming home." "Not yet, but we're following several strong leads. Can I come in?" The living room was a shrine to Ashley's life. Photos covered every surface, chronicling her growth, from gap-toothed child to beautiful young woman. School awards hung on the walls. A framed copy of her dental assistant certification had pride of place above the fireplace. Sarah noticed that every lamp in the house was on, as if Jennifer couldn't bear the darkness. "We believe Ashley was being stalked," Sarah said, deciding honesty was better than false comfort. Jennifer deserved to know what they were dealing with. Multiple witnesses confirmed she felt watched in the weeks before her disappearance. She received anonymous flowers, late-night phone calls with no one speaking, and someone may have been entering her apartment. We're reviewing security footage from locations she frequented, trying to identify any recurring faces or vehicles. Jennifer sank onto the couch, her whole body seeming to collapse. Who would do this? Why Ashley? She never hurt anyone. She spent her weekends taking care of rescue animals. For God's sake, she held doors open for strangers. She tipped servers 30% even when service was bad. She was good, Detective Brennan. She was purely, genuinely good. Sometimes these predators choose victims randomly or based on perceived vulnerability, Sarah began. But Jennifer interrupted her. "Her ex-boyfriend," Jennifer said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "Dylan Chambers. They dated in high school, broke up right before college. He took it badly, kept calling her, showing up places she'd be. She had to block his number. Ashley said he left threatening messages on her voicemail, said if he couldn't have her, no one would. I haven't thought about him in years. But what if he never really let go? What if this is him?" Sarah made a detailed note. "Do you know where Dylan is now?" "Last I heard, he was working at his father's construction company, Chambers Building Supply, over on Industrial Drive. His dad owns it, has those big white work vans with the company logo. Dylan would have access to vehicles, tools, places to—" Jennifer couldn't finish the sentence. This was exactly the kind of lead Sarah needed. An ex-boyfriend with a history of not accepting rejection, access to white vans, and a previous pattern of threatening behavior. It fit the profile too perfectly to ignore. Dylan Chambers was 24, tall and muscular with a buzz cut and tattoos covering both arms. When officers Webb and Patterson brought him in for questioning, he came willingly, though his lawyer arrived within the hour, which Sarah noted with interest. Innocent people didn't usually lawyer up immediately. "I haven't seen Ashley in 5 years," Dylan said, his arms crossed defensively across his chest. "We dated in high school. It ended badly. I moved on." "Her mother says you had trouble accepting the breakup," Sarah pressed, watching his body language carefully. "That you kept contacting her, showing up uninvited, leaving threatening messages." Dylan's jaw clenched. "I was 18 and stupid." "Yeah. I called her a bunch after we broke up." "Yeah. I showed up at her work one time to try to talk to her, to get closure. But she told me to leave her alone, and I did. I respected that. I have a girlfriend now, Sarah Mitchell. Been together for 3 years. We're engaged. I haven't thought about Ashley Elkins in forever." "Did you threaten her?" Sarah asked bluntly. "Her mother says you left messages saying if you couldn't have her, no one would." Dylan's lawyer interjected, "You don't have to answer that." But Dylan shook his head. "No, I'll answer. Did I say some stupid shit when I was 18 and got dumped? Yeah, probably. I was hurt and angry, but threatening her? Actually planning to hurt her? No. Never. I said things I regret, but I never would have acted on them. I was a dumb kid with a broken heart. Where were you Tuesday evening between 4 and 9 p.m.? At work until 6, loading lumber for a big order. Then at Mick's Bar with my crew. We do that every Tuesday, it's like a tradition. We play pool, eat wings, watch whatever game is on. I didn't leave until almost 11. I can give you a dozen names of people who saw me there, including the bartender Mike, who knows us all by name." Sarah studied him carefully. Dylan seemed more annoyed than nervous, and his body language suggested he was telling the truth. His lawyer provided a list of witnesses, and when Sarah's team checked them out over the next few hours, every single one confirmed Dylan's presence at the bar throughout the relevant time period. The bartender even had credit card receipts showing Dylan had paid for 2 rounds of drinks at 7:15 and 9:30. Another dead end, but Sarah couldn't afford to get discouraged. Sometimes solving a case was as much about eliminating suspects as it was about finding the right one. By day 3, 72 hours since Ashley had vanished, the investigation had expanded dramatically. The FBI had been contacted given the possibility of interstate trafficking or abduction. Search parties of volunteers combed the woods surrounding Millbrook Falls. Dive teams checked the river and nearby lakes. Ashley's face was on every news channel, every social media platform, accompanied by the devastating plea from Jennifer Elkins, begging for her daughter's safe return. "If you have my daughter, please let her go," Jennifer had said into the cameras, her voice breaking with every word. "She has so much life ahead of her. Her patients need her. Her friends need her. I need her. Ashley, if you can hear this, know that I love you. Know that I'm not going to stop looking for you. Please, whoever has her, please bring my baby home. She's someone's daughter, someone's girlfriend, someone's best friend. She matters. Please." The clip went viral. Within hours, the tip line was flooded with hundreds of calls. Most were well-meaning but unhelpful, people reporting seeing young women who looked vaguely like Ashley in various locations. Some were from psychics claiming visions of Ashley in different places, all contradicting each other. A handful were from disturbed individuals confessing to crimes they clearly hadn't committed, seeking attention or unable to distinguish reality from fantasy. But one call stood out. "I think I saw the van," a teenage boy named Tyler Bennett told the operator, his voice shaking with nervousness. "Tuesday night around 6 o'clock. I was skateboarding near the old industrial park on Route 7. This white van came flying out of one of the abandoned warehouses, driving way too fast. It almost hit me, like I had to jump off my board and roll onto the grass to avoid getting run over. The driver didn't even slow down. Sarah and Murphy were in an unmarked car heading to Route 7 within 15 minutes of receiving the tip. The industrial park had been dying for years, most businesses relocated or shuttered during the economic recession. The remaining warehouses stood like forgotten monuments to better times, windows broken, walls covered in graffiti, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. "Which building?" Sarah asked Tyler, who'd agreed to meet them at the location and show them exactly where the incident had occurred. The boy pointed to a large warehouse at the end of the complex, its loading dock door hanging at an angle from broken hinges. "That one right there. The van came out of there real fast, didn't even stop at the road before pulling out. I had to bail off my board to avoid getting hit. I remember being pissed about it, but I didn't think anything of it until I saw Ashley's face on the news, and they mentioned a white van." Sarah's heart hammered as she approached the warehouse, adrenaline coursing through her system. Murphy called for backup, and within minutes, additional units arrived along with a K-9 unit. They entered with weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the gloom of the abandoned space, every sense heightened for any sign of danger. The warehouse was mostly empty. Debris and old equipment scattered across the concrete floor. Pigeons had nested in the rafters, and their droppings covered everything in a layer of white. The air smelled of mold and decay. But in the far corner, partially concealed by stacked pallets that had been deliberately arranged, Sarah found what they were looking for. A makeshift space had been set up, clearly occupied recently. A dirty camping chair sat facing a small folding table. Empty water bottles and fast food wrappers were scattered about. A sleeping bag lay rolled in the corner. And on the wall, dozens upon dozens of photos of Ashley Elkins had been taped up in a disturbing collage that covered nearly the entire surface. "Oh God," Murphy breathed, his face going pale. "Oh, Jesus Christ." Sarah felt bile rise in her throat as she studied the photos more closely. They showed Ashley everywhere. At work, helping patients, at the grocery store selecting produce, at the gym on the treadmill, at the coffee shop typing on her laptop, getting into her car, leaving her apartment building. Someone had been following her for weeks, maybe months, documenting her every movement with telephoto lenses. Some photos had been taken through windows, showing Ashley in her apartment cooking dinner, watching television, sleeping in her bed. The violation was staggering, the obsession terrifying. But Ashley wasn't there. The space was abandoned. Recently, by the look of the still fresh food wrappers. Whoever had set up this surveillance hub had cleared out, possibly taking Ashley with them. "Get forensics here now," Sarah ordered, her voice tight with controlled fury. "I want every inch of this place processed. There has to be something here that tells us who this person is. Check for prints, DNA, anything. And somebody canvass this area, see if anyone saw vehicles coming and going from this location." The forensics team worked through the night, carefully documenting and collecting evidence. They found traces of DNA on the water bottles, fingerprints on some of the photo frames. More importantly, they found a receipt that had fallen behind the camping chair, dated from 2 days before Ashley's disappearance. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the photos pinned to the warehouse wall had been printed at a local shop, and it still had a processing date stamp on the back, along with a partial store code. Sarah and Murphy rushed to every photo printing location in Millbrook Falls and the surrounding towns, showing copies of the photo and asking if anyone recognized the order. At Pixel Perfect Photos, a small family-owned business tucked between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation office, they finally caught a break. The owner, an elderly man named George Hartwell, remembered the order immediately when shown the photo. His weathered face creased into a frown of recognition. "Yeah, I remember this one clear as day. Guy came in about 3 weeks ago with a USB drive, wanted like 50 photos printed, all different sizes. I thought it was weird as hell because they were all of the same girl, taken from a distance like someone was spying on her. But he paid cash, said it was for a surprise party slideshow, that he was her brother. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now," he trailed off, looking horrified. "Can you describe him?" Sarah asked, barely able to contain her urgency. This was their best lead yet. George closed his eyes, clearly trying to recall every detail. Middle-aged white guy, maybe mid-40s, dark hair, going gray at the temples, average height, maybe 5'10", average build, not fat but not athletic, clean-shaven, wearing work clothes like a maintenance uniform or janitor outfit, dark blue shirt with a name patch, dark pants, had a badge or ID clipped to his shirt pocket, but I didn't catch what company it was for. Wore glasses, dark-framed ones. Did you see what he was driving? White van, older model Ford, I think, maybe late 2000s. I noticed it because it was taking up 2 parking spots. No company logo or anything on the sides, just plain white. Had some dents on the driver's side door. Sarah's pulse quickened. They were getting closer. Did he give a name when he placed the order? George shuffled through his records, his hands shaking slightly as he realized he might have interacted with a kidnapper. He said his name was David. Paid cash, so there's no credit card receipt with more info. But wait, I might have something that could help. What is it? I always make a backup copy of customer files on our server in case there's a dispute about the order or they want reprints. Usually delete them after 90 days. But this was only 3 weeks ago. Let me check if the file is still in the system. 5 agonizing minutes later, George emerged from the back room with a USB drive. Found it. The original file he brought in is right here. Maybe there's metadata or something that could help. Sarah took the drive like it was made of gold, handling it carefully to preserve any potential evidence. Back at the station, the tech team pulled up the contents with surgical precision. In addition to the photos they'd found in the warehouse, there were dozens more, hundreds more. Ashley at home through her window, getting dressed in her bedroom. Ashley in her bathroom, brushing her teeth. Ashley sleeping in her bed, the photos taken from inside her room. Close-ups of her face while she slept, her hair spread across the pillow, completely vulnerable. This person had been inside her apartment multiple times, taking pictures while she slept, watching her most private moments, documenting her life with the obsessive attention to detail of someone completely deranged. The metadata, the tech called out, pulling Sarah from her horrified examination of the photos. The original photos were taken with a Canon camera. Model number indicates it's about 5 years old. But more importantly, some of these files have location data embedded. Most are from around her apartment and workplace, but there's one set taken from inside a vehicle. The GPS coordinates place it in the parking lot of Ashley's apartment building. Can we pull security footage from her building for the dates these photos were taken? Already on it. Sarah turned her attention to the landlord investigation. She needed to figure out who had access to Ashley's building, who could come and go without raising suspicion. I need everything you have on Ashley's building, she told Murphy. Every employee, every contractor, every person who has or had a key. The landlord, Paul Garrett, was a nervous man in his 50s who ran a small property management company. When Sarah and Murphy showed up at his office, he could barely sit still, constantly fidgeting with papers on his desk. I run a tight ship, he insisted, his voice defensive. Background checks on all tenants, security cameras in common areas, regular maintenance. I don't understand how something like this could happen in one of my buildings. Who has master keys to the apartments? Sarah asked directly. Just me and the building maintenance supervisor. We're the only 2. The keys are kept in a locked cabinet in my office, and I'm very careful about security. Who's your maintenance supervisor? Guy named David Merrick. Been with us about 8 months. Quiet guy, keeps to himself, does excellent work, very reliable, always on time, never any complaints from tenants. Sarah felt electricity shoot through her nervous system. David, the name from the Photoshop. Where can we find him right now? He's off today, but I have his address on file. Why? You don't think David had anything to do with this, do you? He's been nothing but professional. Sarah was already heading for the door, Murphy right behind her. We need that address now. Paul fumbled through his filing cabinet with shaking hands and produced an employee file. David Merrick, 43 years old. living at 2847 Oakwood Lane on the outskirts of town. The file included a photocopy of his driver's license. Sarah studied the photo and felt her breath catch. Dark hair graying at the temples, glasses, average build. It matched George Hartwell's description perfectly. "Has David ever given you any reason for concern?" Murphy asked. "No, never. He's professional with tenants, does quality work. A little awkward socially, maybe. Doesn't make much small talk, but that's not a crime. He mentioned once that he'd moved here from Ohio, said he was looking for a fresh start after a divorce. I did a background check when I hired him. It came back clean." "We'll need a copy of that background check," Sarah said, "and I need you to call David right now. Tell him there's an emergency at one of the properties, and you need him to come in." Paul's face went white. "You want me to lure him in? What if he knows something's wrong? What if he runs?" "That's a risk we have to take. Make the call." Paul dialed with trembling fingers, putting the phone on speaker. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "David, it's Paul. Got a major leak at the Riverside Apartments. Water everywhere. I need you to come in as soon as possible. Call me back." Sarah made a decision. "We're going to his house, now. If Ashley is alive, we may not have time to wait." David Merrick lived in a small house on the outskirts of town, the property surrounded by overgrown hedges that obscured the view from the road. The nearest neighbor was 300 yards away. It was the perfect location for someone who wanted privacy, who didn't want people seeing or hearing what happened inside. Sarah called for backup and a tactical team before approaching. Every instinct screamed that this was their suspect, that Ashley might be inside that house right now. If she was still alive, she might be injured, terrified, running out of time. But if they rushed in without proper backup and David decided to hurt her, they could lose everything. They waited for the tactical team to arrive, setting up a perimeter around the property. Sarah watched the house through binoculars from their surveillance position down the street, looking for any sign of movement. Lights were off in most of the rooms. The white van Tyler had described sat in the driveway, partially covered by a tarp but still clearly visible. One corner of the tarp had blown free, revealing the dented driver's side door George had mentioned. "We've got the right guy," Murphy said quietly, confirming what Sarah already knew. The tactical team arrived within 20 minutes, though to Sarah it felt like hours. The team leader, a veteran named Captain Rodriguez, reviewed the situation quickly and efficiently. "We go in quiet," Sarah instructed, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "If Ashley is in there and still alive, we don't want to spook him into doing something desperate. But we go in prepared for anything. This man has been stalking her for months, broke into her home, abducted her from a public place. He's dangerous, and he's unpredictable." The team moved into position with practiced precision, surrounding the house from all sides. Sarah and Murphy took positions near the front door with Rodriguez and 4 tactical officers. At Sarah's signal, Rodriguez knocked hard on the door. "David Merrick, police! We have a warrant! Open the door!" No response, no movement from inside. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Rodriguez nodded to the breacher, who stepped forward with the battering ram. One solid hit, and the door flew open with a crack of splintering wood. "Police, show yourself!" The team flooded in, weapons drawn, clearing rooms with military efficiency. "Kitchen clear. Living room clear. Bathroom clear." The shouts came rapid fire as they moved through the house. The interior was cluttered but not filthy, filled with electronics and computer equipment. A large desk dominated the living room, covered with multiple monitors and hard drives. Sarah spotted more photos of Ashley pinned to a corkboard above the desk, along with what looked like a schedule of her daily routine written in meticulous detail. "We've got a locked door here," one of the officers called from the hallway. "Deadbolt on the outside. Why would you need to lock a door from the outside?" Sarah's pulse skyrocketed as she rushed to the door. "Breach it, now!" The officer didn't need to be told twice. One solid kick and the door frame splintered. The door swung open to reveal stairs descending into darkness. Sarah's flashlight beam cut through the gloom as she descended carefully, Murphy right behind her. The basement was partially finished, concrete floor with exposed beams, and there in the far corner, handcuffed to a metal support pole, was Ashley Elkins. She was alive. "Ashley!" Sarah rushed forward, Murphy radioing for an ambulance. "We're police. You're safe now. You're safe." Ashley looked up, and Sarah had to fight to keep her expression neutral. The young woman's face was bruised and swollen, one eye almost completely shut. Dried blood crusted around a gash on her forehead. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She was wearing the same clothes she'd disappeared in 4 days ago, now torn and filthy. But her eyes, those green eyes from all the photos, were alert and focused. "He's coming back," Ashley gasped, her voice raw and hoarse. "He went to work. He said he had to keep up appearances, had to act normal. He said he's coming back tonight and we're leaving, going somewhere no one will ever find us. Please, you have to stop him." "You're safe now," Sarah repeated, working quickly to pick the handcuff lock since they didn't have the key. "He's not going to touch you again. I promise." "How long?" Ashley asked, tears streaming down her battered face. "How long have I been gone?" 4 days. Your mom has been looking for you. Everyone has been looking for you." The handcuffs clicked open and Ashley collapsed forward. Sarah caught her, supporting her weight as Murphy rushed to help. "We need that ambulance now," Murphy barked into his radio. As the EMTs loaded Ashley onto a stretcher and started treating her injuries, Sarah heard a vehicle pulling into the driveway. Through the basement window, she saw the white van. David Merrick had returned. The arrest happened fast. Merrick opened his front door to find himself face to face with Captain Rodriguez. Surrounded by armed officers with nowhere to run and no way to escape, he stood frozen in the doorway for a long moment, his face cycling through emotions. Shock, fear, realization, and then a chilling resignation. "On the ground now," Rodriguez shouted. "Hands where I can see them." Merrick complied slowly, lowering himself to his knees and then to his stomach on the porch. Officers moved in immediately, cuffing his hands behind his back. Through it all, Merrick said nothing, but Sarah saw his eyes dart toward the basement window where Ashley had been. He knew they'd found her. He knew it was over. Sarah emerged from the house and looked down at the man who'd terrorized Ashley Elkins, who'd stolen days of her life and might have stolen all of it if they hadn't found her in time. "David Merrick, you're under arrest for kidnapping, assault, breaking and entering, stalking, and a list of other charges that's going to ensure you spend the rest of your life in prison." Merrick finally spoke, his voice flat and emotionless. "I loved her. I just wanted her to understand that we were meant to be together. If you'd just given me more time, she would have seen it too." Sarah felt disgust wash over her, but she kept her voice professional. "Love doesn't look like this, Mr. Merrick. This is obsession. This is violence. This is a crime." The hospital waiting room filled with people within an hour of Ashley's rescue. Jennifer Elkins arrived first, someone having called her the moment Ashley was found. She ran through the emergency room doors in her pajamas and bare feet, having literally jumped out of bed and into her car the second she got the news. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" Jennifer's voice carried through the entire ER. A nurse tried to stop her, to explain that Ashley was being examined, but Jennifer wasn't having it. It took Sarah physically intercepting her to slow her down. "Mrs. Elkins, Ashley is alive. She's being treated right now. The doctors need a little time to examine her and make sure she's stable, but she's asking for you. She wants to see you." Jennifer burst into tears, her whole body shaking with the force of her sobs. Sarah held her while she cried. This mother who'd spent 4 days in absolute hell, not knowing if her daughter was alive or dead. Marcus arrived moments later, then Kayla, then co-workers and friends, all desperate to see Ashley, to confirm she was really alive and safe. The doctor eventually had to limit visitors, but he allowed Jennifer to go in first. The reunion between mother and daughter broke every heart in the vicinity. Sarah watched through the door window as Jennifer rushed to Ashley's bedside, gathering her carefully into her arms while both women sobbed. The sound of their crying carried through the closed door, a release of 4 days of terror and grief and desperate hope. Ashley had suffered significant trauma. The head wound required 12 stitches. She had bruising around her throat consistent with manual strangulation. Her wrists were raw and bloody from the handcuffs. She was severely dehydrated and malnourished. The doctors wanted to keep her for observation, concerned about possible internal injuries and the psychological impact of her ordeal. But she was alive. Against all odds, against everything Sarah had feared, Ashley Elkins was alive. Sarah interviewed Ashley the following morning, once the doctors cleared her and a victim advocate could be present. Ashley sat in her hospital bed, Jennifer on one side holding her hand and Marcus on the other. She looked small and fragile in the hospital gown, but her voice was steady as she recounted her nightmare. "I was at the shopping center to pick up a prescription at the pharmacy," Ashley began, her eyes distant as she remembered. "I parked and was getting out of my car when I heard someone behind me. Before I could turn around, something hit me in the head. Hard. I fell against my car and he grabbed me, put something over my face, a cloth soaked in something chemical smelling. I tried to fight, tried to scream, but everything went fuzzy and then black." "Do you remember anything between being grabbed and waking up?" Sarah asked gently. "Fragments, being carried, the sound of a van door sliding open, driving, lots of driving, waking up and immediately being drugged again. Then I woke up in that basement, handcuffed to a pipe with my head pounding." Jennifer squeezed Ashley's hand tighter, fresh tears streaming down her face. "He came down a few hours after I woke up. He was so calm, so normal, like this was just an everyday thing. He said his name was David and that he'd been watching me for months. He said he loved me, that he knew everything about me, and that I'd learn to love him too." Ashley's voice shook, but she continued. "He said he'd been planning this for a long time, that he got the job at my building specifically to be close to me, that he'd been in my apartment dozens of times while I was at work, learning about me, taking pictures of me while I slept." Marcus made a sound of anguish, and Ashley turned to him. "I'm okay. I'm here. It's over." "What did he do to you in those 4 days?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. "He talked. Constantly. For hours and hours, he'd sit on the stairs and talk at me about his feelings, about destiny, about how we were meant to be together. He brought me food twice a day, just fast food and water. He never touched me sexually." Ashley's voice dropped. "But on the second day, I tried to convince him to let me go. I begged, I cried, I promised I wouldn't tell anyone, and he got angry. Really angry. He grabbed me by the throat and choked me until I passed out. When I woke up, he was crying, apologizing, saying he didn't want to hurt me, but I had to stop fighting our connection." "Jesus," Murphy muttered from his position by the door. "The third day, he said we were going to leave, that he'd found a place in Montana where we could start over, where no one would find us. He said he was just finishing things up at work so no one would suspect anything, and then we'd leave that night. But then you found me." Ashley looked directly at Sarah. "How did you find me? How did you know?" Sarah explained the investigation, the photos, the warehouse, the photo shop, the connection to Ashley's building. "A lot of people worked very hard to bring you home, Ashley. Your mom never stopped pushing us. Your friends provided crucial information. A teenage kid on a skateboard who almost got hit by a van gave us the lead we needed. Sometimes it takes a village." "I never gave up hope that someone would find me," Ashley said quietly. "Even when he said no one knew where I was, that I'd disappear without a trace, I knew my mom wouldn't stop looking. I knew you were out there searching." She looked at Jennifer. "I knew you'd move heaven and earth to find me." "Always," Jennifer whispered. "Always and forever." David Merrick's house yielded a horrifying treasure trove of evidence over the next several days. Computer forensics found not just thousands of photos of Ashley, but photos of other women as well. The FBI determined that Merrick had stalked at least 6 other women in different states over the past decade, though Ashley was the first he'd actually abducted. He'd moved around frequently, always finding jobs that gave him access to people's homes, maintenance work, delivery services, cable installation, pest control. He's a serial predator, the FBI profiler told Sarah during a briefing. His pattern shows escalating behavior over the years, started with following women, advanced to breaking into their homes, stealing personal items, taking photos. Ashley Elkins represented his first actual abduction. Based on what we found in his computer search history and the location he'd scouted in Montana, we believe he was planning to hold her indefinitely. You found her just in time. Another day or two, and he would have moved her, and we might never have found her. The trial was surprisingly swift, with overwhelming evidence, detailed testimony from Ashley, and Merrick's own computer files documenting his obsession. His lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He was convicted on all counts: kidnapping, assault, stalking, breaking and entering, attempted murder, and violations under federal interstate stalking laws for his previous victims in other states. The judge showed no mercy during sentencing. "The depths of your depravity are almost incomprehensible," the judge said, looking down at Merrick with unconcealed disgust. "You violated this young woman's safety, her home, her privacy, her trust in the world. You terrorized her, brutalized her, and planned to imprison her for the rest of her life. The only mercy I find in this case is that you were caught before you could fully execute your plan. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison without any possibility of parole. You will never breathe free air again. You will never have the opportunity to harm another human being." Merrick showed no emotion as he was led away in chains, his face blank and empty. Sarah watched from the gallery and felt nothing but relief that this monster would be caged forever. 3 months after her rescue, Ashley was slowly rebuilding her life. She'd moved to a new apartment across town, unable to bear living in the place where Merrick had watched her sleep and violated her privacy. She'd changed jobs, taking a position at a different dental office where no one knew her story unless she chose to share it. She was in therapy 3 times a week, working through the trauma and the nightmares that still woke her screaming. Sarah visited her one afternoon at her invitation. Ashley's new apartment was bright and cheerful, with multiple locks on the door and a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. A large German shepherd met Sarah at the door, all wagging tail and protective energy. "This is justice," Ashley said with a small smile. "My therapist suggested a dog would help me feel safer. He goes everywhere with me." "He's beautiful," Sarah said, letting the dog sniff her hand. They sat in Ashley's living room drinking tea, and Sarah was struck by how different Ashley seemed from the terrified young woman she'd found in that basement. There was strength in her now, a resilience that trauma had forged. "How are you doing, really?" Sarah asked. Ashley considered the question carefully. "Some days are better than others. I still have nightmares where I'm back in that basement and no one finds me. I still check my locks obsessively before bed. I still look over my shoulder when I'm in public. But I'm here. I'm alive. I'm healing. That's something. You're doing more than surviving, Ashley. You're thriving. I'm trying. I've been thinking about becoming a victim's advocate, using what happened to me to help other people who've been through similar trauma. My therapist says it might be too soon, that I need more time to heal first. But I feel like I need to do something positive with this experience, you know? Something that proves he didn't win." Sarah felt a surge of admiration for this young woman. "I think you'd be excellent at that when you're ready. You have a unique perspective and a strength that could really help people. I also wanted to thank you," Ashley said, her eyes filling with tears. "You saved my life. If you hadn't found me when you did, I wouldn't be here. David was planning to take me away that night. If you'd been even a few hours later, you don't have to thank me. It's my job. But more than that, you have an incredible support system. Your mom, Marcus, Kayla, they never gave up. They provided the information we needed. And you stayed strong in that basement. You stayed alive. You did that." Jennifer Elkins also found purpose in the aftermath of her nightmare. She started a support group for families of kidnapping victims, providing resources and emotional support to people going through what she'd experienced. She became an advocate for better security measures in apartment buildings and pushed for legislation requiring more thorough background checks for any workers who had master key access to people's homes.